The low hum of the studio lights was a familiar comfort, a sound that had been the backdrop to 1,000 interviews over 60 years. Dame Judi Dench sat in the green room, a fine china cup of Earl Grey warming her hands, chatting amiably with a young production assistant about his aspirations to be a director. Her publicist, a sharp woman named Eleanor, fluttered nearby, checking her phone and ensuring everything was perfectly on schedule for the 10-minute promotional slot on Loose Women. It was meant to be a simple, pleasant affair to discuss her latest film, The Last Letter, a poignant drama about a woman discovering her late husband's secrets. At 78, Dame Judi radiated a quiet, unshakable grace. She had navigated the treacherous waters of the entertainment industry with a professionalism that was legendary. Nothing, she believed, could truly rattle her anymore. 2 minutes, Dame Judi, the assistant said, his voice full of reverence. Thank you, dear boy, she smiled, placing the cup and saucer on a nearby table. Right then, Eleanor. Shall we face the music? She walked through the brightly lit corridors, the faint sound of the show's theme music growing louder. As she stepped onto the set during the commercial break, the studio audience erupted into a spontaneous, heartfelt round of applause. She waved, a genuine warmth in her eyes, as she took her seat at the panel table. Ruth Langsford, the consummate professional, gave her a reassuring squeeze on the arm. Colleen Nolan beamed, her smile wide and welcoming. Even the notoriously sharp-tongued Janet Street Porter offered a nod of genuine respect. And then there was Denise Welch, perched at the head of the table, a glint in her eye that was just a little too sharp. Her smile a little too wide. The floor manager began the countdown, his fingers slicing through the air. 10, 9, 8. Ruth straightened her cue cards. Okay, we're back in 5. Just remember, ladies, keep it light, have fun. A tinny voice from the gallery producer crackled in their earpieces. 3, 2, 1. The applause sign lit up. The audience cheered on cue, and the theme music swelled before fading into the background. Welcome back to Loose Women. Denise began, her voice a jarringly bright, almost brittle sound that cut through the studio's warmth. We are absolutely thrilled today, because we are joined by a true national treasure, a living legend, Dame Judi Dench. The audience applauded again, and Judi inclined her head graciously. Denise let the applause die down, her smirk firmly in place. Though I have to be honest, Judi, looking at your schedule, I'm exhausted for you. I'm surprised you're still doing the rounds at your age. Most people would have packed it in by now, put their feet up with a nice sherry, and made way for the younger talent, wouldn't they? A strange, sudden quiet fell over the studio. It was so abrupt that the gentle whirring of the large cameras suddenly seemed deafening. The audience, which had been buzzing with excitement, was collectively holding its breath. Ruth Langsford's welcoming smile froze on her face, her eyes darting towards Denise with a flicker of panic. Colleen Nolan's jovial expression slackened into confusion. This wasn't the usual cheeky banter. The edge on Denise's words was serrated. Dame Judi, ever the professional, absorbed the blow without flinching, though a careful observer might have noticed the slightest tightening around her eyes. She gave a small diplomatic laugh. Well, Denise, she replied, her voice as smooth and measured as ever, I suppose when you love what you do as much as I do, age becomes rather irrelevant. The passion for storytelling doesn't exactly come with an expiration date, you see. Ruth seized the opportunity, desperate to steer the conversation back onto safe ground, and we are so glad it doesn't. Dame Judi, we're absolutely thrilled to have you here. This new film, The Last Letter, it sounds utterly fascinating. Tell us about the character of Ilara. But Denise wasn't finished. She leaned forward, placing her elbows on the desk, creating a physical barrier between Ruth and their guest. Her smirk widened. Oh, please, Ruth, let's not be disingenuous. We can get to the film in a minute. Let's be honest here. I mean, how many more Bond films could you have possibly squeezed out of that tired old M character if they hadn't killed her off? Surely it's time to pass the torch to someone who can actually keep up with the action sequences without needing a stunt double to get out of a chair. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. This was no longer a misjudged joke. It was a direct personal attack. The other panelists exchanged worried glances. Colleen Nolan cleared her throat nervously, picking up her mug of tea with a hand that trembled slightly. Janet Street Porter, who was rarely lost for words, looked down at her notes, her brow furrowed in disbelief. In their earpieces, the producer's voice was sharp and panicked. Denise, what are you doing? Pull it back. Ruth, take control. Talk about the film. Dame Judi's eyes narrowed, but her voice remained unnervingly steady. I think you'll find that experience and wisdom are quite valuable assets in any role. Whether it's the head of MI6 or any other character I've had the privilege to portray, experience, Denise scoffed, practically spitting the word out with a dismissive wave of her hand. Is that what we're calling it now? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks more like desperation. clinging to the spotlight, taking roles that should be going to actresses who haven't already had 60 years of it. Ruth tried to intervene again, her voice firmer this time. Denise, that's incredibly unfair. I think perhaps we should focus on Dame Judi's incredible and ongoing achievements and her new project, which is what she's here to talk about. No. Ruth, Denise snapped, turning her glare towards her fellow presenter with shocking hostility. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of everyone in this industry tiptoeing around these aging stars who refuse to step aside gracefully. It's embarrassing, quite frankly. The temperature in the studio seemed to plummet. Dame Judi sat perfectly still, her hands folded elegantly in her lap. But a profound shift was occurring behind her eyes. The gentle, grandmotherly warmth that had charmed generations was receding, being replaced by something much older, much sharper. It was the focused intensity of a Shakespearean queen preparing for battle. Embarrassing, Dame Judi repeated slowly, her voice quiet but resonant, as if she were testing the weight of the word on her tongue. That's an interesting choice of words, Denise. Well, it is, though, isn't it? Denise pressed on, utterly oblivious to the dangerous ground she was treading, egged on by the sudden, complete focus of every camera in the room. You're pushing 80, love. Don't you think it's time to let someone else have a go? Enjoy your garden, your grandchildren. Colleen Nolan finally found her voice, a note of pleading in it. Denise, for goodness sake, I really don't think this is appropriate. Dame Judi is our guest, an icon, and she deserves our respect. Oh, here we go. Denise rolled her eyes dramatically, playing to a camera she imagined was on her side. The respect card. The Dame card. Just because someone's got a title from the Queen doesn't mean they're immune to an honest conversation about the industry. Janet Street Porter finally looked up from her notes, her expression a mixture of fury and contempt. This isn't an honest conversation. Denise, she said, her voice clipped and precise. This is a public mugging. It's just rude. But Denise was in full flow now, high on the adrenaline of her own perceived audacity, her voice rising with each word. Rude. I'll tell you what's rude. It's rude to take roles away from younger actresses who are struggling to pay their rent. It's rude to cling to fame when your best days are so clearly behind you. That was the moment. The final straw. Dame Judi's legendary composure finally began to crack. A deep, cold anger, forged on the stages of the Old Vic and the Royal Shakespeare Company, rose to the surface. Her voice, when she spoke, carried a steely edge that silenced the entire building. My best days are behind me, I see. And who precisely appointed you the arbiter of when an actor's career is over? Common sense appointed me. Denise shot back, her face flushed. Something that seems to be in short supply with your generation. The silence that followed was deafening, absolute. Ruth Langsford's mouth had fallen open in shock. Colleen had gone pale. The producer's voice in their ears was a frantic scream of expletives. Cut her mic! Someone cut her mic! We're going to a break! Get ready to go to break! But it was too late. Dame Judi slowly, deliberately, reached up to her ear and removed her earpiece, placing it carefully on the table in front of her with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot in the silent studio. She was severing her connection to the gallery, to the producers, to the rules of the show. When she looked up, her eyes were blazing with a fire that none of them had ever witnessed in the gentle actress they thought they knew. In my 60 years in this business, she began, her voice deceptively quiet, but carrying the force of a thunderclap that commanded every ounce of attention. Working with the greatest actors, directors, and writers of the 20th and 21st centuries, I have never, not once, been spoken to with such blatant, unprovoked disrespect and such profound ignorance. Denise, finally sensing the tectonic plates shifting beneath her, that she might have catastrophically misjudged her prey, tried to backtrack. Now hold on, Dame Judi, I was just trying to have an honest discussion about... Honest? Dame Judi's voice rose, slicing through Denise's feeble attempt. There was nothing honest about your ambush. That was a calculated, premeditated attempt to humiliate me on live television for your own sport. And I will not stand for it. Ruth Langsford desperately tried to salvage the situation. Dame Judi, please. We are so sorry. Denise doesn't speak for all of us, I assure you. But Denise, trapped and wounded, chose to double down rather than retreat. If anything, Dame Judi's powerful response seemed to fuel her rage. Oh, for heaven's sake, don't go getting all dramatic on us. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Your generation, you think you can just throw a theatrical tantrum whenever someone dares to tell you a home truth. Dame Judi stood up. It was a slow, deliberate movement. The sound of her chair scraping against the polished floor seemed to echo through the stunned studio. Every eye, every camera was locked on her as she straightened to her full, albeit modest height. And in that moment, she was not just Judi Dench, the beloved actress. She was Titania, Queen of the Fairies. She was Cleopatra. She was Queen Victoria. The legendary performer who had commanded stages and screens for decades was fully, terrifyingly present. A tantrum, Her voice was dangerously quiet now. You think this is a tantrum? Let me tell you something about truth, Denise. The truth is that I have worked harder in a single week of my career. I've poured more discipline, more study, more heart into one scene than you have in your entire television run. The color drained from Denise's face. She opened her mouth, but only a small, strangled sound came out. She tried to rally with misguided bravado. That's rich, coming from someone who's been coasting on the same stiff upper lip roll for the past 20 years. Janet Street Porter finally spoke up, her voice sharp with utter disapproval. Denise, shut up. Stop this right now. You're making a complete and utter fool of yourself. I'm making a fool of myself. Denise whirled around to face Janet, her voice cracking. I'm the only one here brave enough to say what everyone's thinking. No, Colleen Nolan interjected firmly, her usual warmth replaced with a cold fury. You're the only one here cruel enough to attack a respected guest who has done nothing to you, for no reason other than your own twisted entertainment. Dame Judi took a small step closer to the table, her presence commanding the entire room, making the brightly colored set feel like the stage at the Globe. You want to talk about coasting, Denise? Let's talk about it. Tell me, what exactly have you contributed to the arts? What legacy are you so diligently building that gives you the authority to pass judgment on mine? I don't have to justify myself to you, Denise snapped, but her voice wavered, losing its conviction. No, you don't, Dame Judi agreed with a chilling calmness. But you certainly felt the need to justify attacking me on live television, and you have failed, spectacularly. Ruth tried one last time to restore some semblance of order. Ladies, please, we're live on air. Can we please just take a breath and don't you dare try to manage me right now, Ruth. Dame Judi cut her off, her tone sharp but not directed at Ruth with any malice. She pointed a steady, unwavering finger directly at Denise. This woman invited me onto this program under the most false of pretenses and then launched into a vicious personal attack the moment the cameras started rolling. This is no longer an interview. Denise's face was now a blotchy red, a mixture of fury and deep dawning humiliation. A vicious attack. I was having a conversation about the entertainment industry. If you can't handle a little bit of criticism, then maybe you really are too old for this business. The gasp from the other panel members was audible even through the television microphones. Janet Street Porter actually covered her face with her hands in second-hand shame, while Colleen looked as if she might be physically sick. Dame Judi's eyes flashed with a righteous fury. Too old, I see. So in your narrow-minded, myopic view of the world, a woman reaches a certain age and should simply disappear. She should stop creating, stop contributing, stop existing in the public space she has earned. I didn't say that, Denise protested weakly, her voice shrinking. Oh, but you did. Dame Judi's voice grew stronger, each word a perfectly enunciated indictment. You implied it with every condescending, ageist remark. You believe women of my age should step aside, make way, become invisible, so that people like you can have their turn. As if talent and experience and dedication are finite resources that you are somehow being denied. Ruth Langsford found her courage and addressed Denise directly, her voice shaking with anger. This is completely and utterly unacceptable behavior, Denise. Dame Judi is our guest, a guest we were honored to have, and you've been nothing but hostile and abusive since she sat down. Thank you, Ruth, Dame Judi nodded graciously. But I can handle this myself. She turned back to Denise, her focus once again absolute. You know what is truly embarrassing, Denise? A woman using her national platform, not to enlighten, not to entertain, but to tear down another woman. A presenter who believes cruelty passes for honest commentary. Denise tried to regain control of the narrative, her last defense crumbling. I was trying to ask the hard questions that other interviewers are too polite to ask. Hard questions? Dame Judi laughed, a short, sharp, humorless sound. My dear woman, you wouldn't know a hard question if it sat on your face. Hard questions would be about my craft, my process, the challenges of embodying a character like Ilara in my new film. You haven't asked a single intelligent question. What you did was launch a series of petty personal insults disguised as journalism. Janet Street Porter leaned forward, addressing Denise with undisguised frustration. This isn't journalism, Denise. This is a pathetic playground squabble that you started. It's spiteful, and frankly, it's beneath this show. Spite? Denise's voice rose to an almost hysterical shriek. I'll tell you what's spite. It's taking roles that should go to actresses half your age, just because you can't accept that your time is over. The studio fell utterly, completely silent. Even the frantic producer in the gallery seemed to be stunned into inaction. Dame Judi stood perfectly still for a long moment, a flicker of something almost like pity crossing her face before it hardened again into resolution. And when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of decades of artistic triumph and personal integrity. My time is over, she said, and then she smiled. but it was a smile that could cut glass. My time, Denise, will be over when I choose for it to be over. Not when a failed actress turned television presenter who is clearly drowning in her own bitterness decides it should be. The words hit Denise like a physical blow. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She had clearly, disastrously, not expected Dame Judi to fight back with such devastating precision and force. Colleen saw the moment to try and de-escalate, to offer an olive branch. Dame Judi, on behalf of the rest of us, we want you to know that Denise's opinions are solely her own. The rest of us have nothing but the deepest admiration for your continued work and your immeasurable contributions to film and theatre. I appreciate that, Colleen. I truly do, Dame Judi replied warmly, her tone softening for a moment. But this goes beyond personal opinions. This is about a fundamental lack of basic human decency and professional respect. Denise, realizing she was losing the battle badly and was now completely isolated, made one last, desperate and pathetic attempt to regain the upper hand. Respect has to be earned, she sneered, and I don't think clinging to past glories earns you anything but pity. The reaction from the other panel members was immediate and fierce. Ruth Langsford actually gasped out loud, "Denise!" while Janet Street Porter shook her head in utter disgust. But it was Dame Judi's response that would become the stuff of television legend. She looked at Denise for a long, silent moment, her expression shifting from anger to something far more dangerous, complete and utter contempt. When she spoke, her voice was steady, clear, and absolutely devastating. "Past glories," she repeated slowly, letting the words hang in the air. "Let me tell you about past glories, Denise. My past glories include 8 BAFTA awards, 2 Golden Globes, a Tony, and an Academy Award for 8 minutes of screen time in Shakespeare in Love. They include standing on the stage of the Old Vic as Ophelia in 1957. They include being a cornerstone of the Royal Shakespeare Company for 30 years. What exactly are your glories, Denise? Past or present? Remind me." Denise's face went white. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Dame Judi continued, her voice gaining momentum like a gathering storm. "My past glories include being made a Dame Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire by Her Majesty the Queen for services to drama. They include a lifetime of creating art, of bringing joy and thought and catharsis to millions of people. They include mentoring young actors who have gone on to have brilliant careers of their own. Tell me, Denise, what have you built? What have you created? What will people remember you for when you are gone, other than this single wretched display of professional self-immolation?" Ruth was staring at Dame Judi with naked admiration. Janet Street Porter was nodding vigorously, a thin, approving smile on her lips. Colleen had tears in her eyes, clearly moved by the passion and dignity of Dame Judi's words. I've worked on this show for years," Denise finally managed to stammer, her voice weak and defensive. "Yes," Dame Judi agreed, her voice softening with a surgeon's precision. "You have. And in all those years, have you used this platform to inspire people, to encourage them, to lift them up? Or have you simply used it to tear others down because it provides a fleeting, hollow comfort for your own profound disappointments?" The question hung in the air like a sword. Denise looked around desperately at her fellow panel members, but found no support there. Ruth was looking at her with undisguised disappointment, Janet with disgust, and Colleen with something approaching pity. "You don't know anything about my career," Denise said weakly, a pathetic final defense. Dame Judi's laugh was cold and sharp. "I know enough. I know that in the space of 15 minutes, you have shown your entire audience exactly who you are. A small, bitter person who mistakes cruelty for honesty and foolishly believes that tearing others down will somehow build you up." Janet Street Porter finally exploded. "Denise, this is absolutely disgraceful. Dame Judi came here as our guest, and you have treated her abominably. You should be ashamed of yourself. Don't you start on me too, Janet." Denise snapped, but there was no fight left in her voice, only the brittle sound of defeat. "I'll start on whoever I please when they behave this badly," Janet shot back. "This is the most unprofessional, embarrassing display I have ever witnessed on live television." Dame Judi reached for her handbag, which had been placed beside her chair. "You know what the truly sad thing is, Denise? You had the opportunity today to have a wonderful conversation with someone who might have shared some interesting stories, some insights from 6 decades in this industry. Instead, you chose to waste it on petty jealousy and bile. You wasted your time, my time, and the audience's time." Ruth Langsford stood up quickly. "Dame Judi, please don't leave. We can continue this interview properly. Denise, I think you should apologize now." "Apologize?" Denise's voice cracked with indignation, but she was clearly rattled, looking around like a cornered animal. "For what?" "For speaking my mind." Dame Judi turned to face her one final time. "For speaking your mind." "No, Denise. You're welcome to your mind, such as it is. Apologize for showing the entire country what a hollow and unkind person you are. Apologize for wasting everyone's time with your bitterness. Apologize for proving that some people will use any platform, no matter how small, to spread negativity rather than create something worthwhile. Colleen Nolan found her voice again, her tone firm. Dame Judi is right. This has been completely unacceptable. We invited you here to talk about your new film, and instead, you've been subjected to a personal character assassination. It wasn't a personal attack, Denise protested, but her voice was barely above a whisper now. It was nothing but a personal attack, Dame Judi corrected firmly. From the moment I sat down, you made it clear that your agenda was hostility. You didn't ask about my work, my process, my passion for acting. You attacked my age, my relevance, and my fundamental right to continue working in a profession I love. That's not journalism, Denise. That is bullying. The word bullying seemed to finally land, breaking through Denise's wall of self-righteousness. She slumped back in her chair, all the fight draining out of her, suddenly looking very small and very alone at the panel table. Dame Judi adjusted her handbag on her shoulder and looked directly into the main camera, her expression softening into one of heartfelt sincerity. To the viewers at home, I want you to know that this kind of behavior is not representative of the many wonderful people I have had the pleasure of working with in British television. Most presenters are professional, respectful, and genuinely interested in having meaningful conversations. She then turned back to the panel, her gaze resting on Ruth, Janet, and Colleen. Thank you, the three of you, for trying to maintain some semblance of dignity during this debacle. Your efforts to redirect the conversation were noted and appreciated, even if they were ultimately unsuccessful. Ruth stood up and extended her hand. Dame Judi, I cannot apologize enough for what happened here today. This is not how we conduct ourselves, and it's certainly not how we treat our esteemed guests. Dame Judi shook Ruth's hand graciously. Thank you, Ruth. I can see that you are a true professional, and I appreciate your attempts to salvage the situation. Janet Street Porter also stood. Dame Judi, I am mortified. You handled that with more grace than anyone should ever have to muster. Thank you. Janet, your support during this ordeal was clear, and it was appreciated. Colleen Nolan wiped a tear from her eye as she stood. I'm just so sorry. You came here in good faith, and you were met with this. It's unforgivable. Dame Judi's expression grew warm as she looked at Colleen. Don't cry, my dear. This isn't your fault. You all tried to steer things in the right direction. Throughout all of this, Denise remained seated, staring down at her hands on the desk. Completely deflated and thoroughly defeated, Dame Judi took one last look around the studio, then addressed the camera once more with a final, powerful message. I have had a wonderful career, and I intend to continue having one for as long as I am able and willing. Age is not a barrier to creativity, to passion, or to contribution. Anyone who suggests otherwise is simply revealing their own very sad limitations. With that, Dame Judi Dench turned and walked off the set, her head held high, leaving behind a studio full of shocked crew members. 3 embarrassed but supportive panelists, and 1 thoroughly humiliated presenter who had learned, far too late, what happens when you mistake a legend's kindness for weakness. The cameras continued to roll for several seconds on the carnage. The floor manager stood frozen, his mouth agape, unsure of what to do. In the gallery, the producer was shouting, "Go to break! Go to break now! Get a bloody commercial on!" The shot lingered on Denise's stunned, ashen face and the obvious discomfort of the other women before abruptly cutting to black. It was a moment of television that would be replayed and dissected for years, not as a triumph of confrontational television, but as a masterclass in dignity under fire and the swift, devastating consequences of disrespecting a dame. The red on-air light blinked off. For a full 3 seconds, an unnatural vacuum of silence persisted on the set of Loose Women. Then sound rushed back in with the force of a tidal wave. The live audience, released from the spell of the confrontation, erupted into a cacophony of hushed, frantic chatter. Crew members, who had been frozen at their stations, began speaking into their headsets all at once. The floor manager, a young man named Liam with sweat beading on his forehead, looked utterly lost, staring at the empty space where Dame Judi Dench had stood just moments before. On the panel, the spell was broken. Ruth Langsford sank back into her chair and put her head in her hands, her shoulders slumping. Colleen Nolan let out a long, shaky breath and reached for her mug, her hand trembling too much to take a sip. Janet Street Porter, however, was a coiled spring of pure fury. She slowly turned her head to look at Denise Welch. Denise was still sitting there, a mannequin of shock. Her face was a pale, waxy mask, her eyes wide and unfocused. She stared at the earpiece Dame Judi had left on the table, as if it were a venomous snake. "Well," Janet said, her voice dripping with ice. "Are you proud of yourself?" Denise flinched as if struck. She blinked, trying to regain some semblance of her earlier bravado. She twisted everything I said, she stammered, her voice a hoarse whisper. I was just trying to make a point about— Oh, shut up, Denise, Janet snapped, her voice low but carrying the lethal precision of a stiletto. Just for once in your life, shut your gob. You didn't make a point. You brought a national treasure, a woman of immense talent and dignity, onto this show, and you systematically and sadistically tried to tear her apart on live television. You were a cruel, unprofessional bully, and you have brought shame on this entire program. Before Denise could formulate a reply, the heavy studio door burst open, and a portly man in a rumpled shirt with a headset clamped over his bald head stormed onto the set. It was Martin, the executive producer, and his face was the color of a ripe plum. He marched directly to the table, ignoring everyone else, and jabbed a finger in Denise's direction. What in the name of God was that? He hissed, his voice a furious whisper that was somehow louder than a shout. What was that? Are you insane? We have ITV's Standards and Practices Department on the phone. We have Judi Dench's agent on the phone. And my phone is currently having a nuclear meltdown from every journalist in the country. I told you to pull it back. I screamed it in your ear. Did you not hear me? Martin, I was just— Denise began, her eyes welling up with tears of self-pity. Don't, Martin, I was just me. He cut her off. You've just torpedoed the show? The switchboard has lit up like a Christmas tree with complaints. The justice for Judi is already the #1 trend on Twitter. In 4 minutes you have become a national villain. Ruth finally lifted her head. Her face was grim, her eyes cold with a professional fury that was almost more terrifying than Janet's hot rage. Martin, shouting at her isn't going to help right now. We have 2 minutes and 40 seconds of commercials, and then we are live again. We have 22 minutes of the show left to fill. What is the plan? Martin ran a hand over his sweating head, momentarily stunned by the logistics of the disaster. The plan? The plan is— I don't know. What do we say? Welcome back. Sorry our presenter just mauled a beloved icon. We have to address it, Ruth said firmly, shifting into her anchor role, the only one capable of navigating the crisis. I'll open the next segment. I'll apologize to the viewers, and I will offer a profound and unreserved apology to Dame Judi. Colleen, Janet, you back me up. Denise, you will say nothing. You will sit there and you will look contrite, and you will not utter a single word for the rest of the broadcast. Do you understand me? Denise looked from Ruth's steely gaze to Martin's apoplectic face. She nodded meekly, her entire body seeming to shrink in on itself. The fight was gone, replaced by the cold, creeping dread of consequence. Meanwhile, backstage, the atmosphere was electric. Dame Judi was ushered into the now empty green room by her publicist Eleanor, who was a whirlwind of activity. She had one phone pressed to her ear while simultaneously texting on another. Yes, Charles, she's fine. No, of course she won't be giving any further comment at this time. Yes, I saw it. Ghastly. I'll release a statement within the hour. Click. She hung up and immediately dialed another number. Dame Judi sat down on the plush sofa, her hands clasped in her lap. The adrenaline from the confrontation was beginning to subside, leaving a tremor in its wake. She felt a deep, profound weariness settle over her. Eleanor, she said quietly. Eleanor paused her frantic work, looking at her client with concern. Judi, are you all right? Do you need some water? Brandy? No, thank you, dear, Judi sighed. I feel rather unclean. I detest public confrontation. To have been goaded into such a display. It's not my way, your way, Eleanor said, her voice filled with a fierce loyalty. Judi, you were magnificent. You were cornered, and you responded with more grace and power than I have ever seen. You didn't create a display. You defended yourself against a vicious, unprovoked assault. My phone hasn't stopped. Piers Morgan is already calling for Welch to be fired. Stephen Fry just tweeted that your response should be taught in schools as a masterclass in the elegant annihilation of a fool. You haven't done anything wrong. Perhaps not, Judi conceded. But it is a sad state of affairs. When one must resort to such bluntness, it's also terribly vulgar. She looked around. The room and her eyes fell on the young production assistant who had brought her tea earlier. He was hovering by the door, looking pale and horrified. Young man, Judi called to him, her voice regaining its familiar warmth. The assistant jumped. Yes, Dame Judi. Are you quite all right? That was a rather dreadful thing to have to witness. The assistant's eyes widened. Me, I'm fine. I was worried about you. That's very kind of you, she smiled, a genuine, gentle smile. Don't you worry about me. And don't let this ugly business put you off your ambitions. Television is usually a much kinder place than that. Back on the studio floor, Martin was giving Ruth her final instructions as the commercial clock ticked down. 30 seconds back, Liam, the floor manager, called out. Okay, Ruth, Martin said, his voice low and urgent. Keep it simple, sincere. Apologize to Judi, apologize to the viewers. Don't mention Denise by name if you can help it. Just refer to the tone of the previous interview. Then for God's sake pivot to the phone-in topic. What's the topic? A flustered researcher handed him a card. Is it ever okay to re-gift a present? Martin stared at the card in disbelief. Are you joking? We've just had a public execution, and we're going to talk about re-gifting. Fine, whatever. Just get us to the end of the show without the building burning down. He pointed at Denise one last time. Not a word. He then scurried off the set just as Liam started the final countdown. 10, 9. Ruth took a deep, centering breath. Colleen reached over and gave her hand a squeeze of support. Janet sat like a statue carved from granite, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Denise stared at her lap, her hair falling forward to hide her face. 3, 2, 1. The on-air light flickered back to life. The camera focused tightly on Ruth's face. Welcome back to Loose Women, she began. Her voice steady, professional, but infused with a deep solemnity that was entirely new to the show's usually breezy format. Before we continue, I, and all of us here on the panel, would like to sincerely and profoundly apologize. Not just to you, our viewers at home, but to our earlier guest, Dame Judi Dench. She looked directly into the lens, her expression one of utter sincerity. What happened in the previous segment was not acceptable. Loose Women is a show that aims to be a place for lively, honest, and respectful debate. The line was crossed today, the tone of the interview was inexcusable, and the treatment of our guest was deeply disrespectful. Dame Judi, if you are watching, we are mortified and we are truly, deeply sorry. You are and will always be a guest that we are honored to have, and we apologize that your visit today was marred by such an unpleasant experience. The camera pulled out to a foreshot of the panel. Colleen nodded in agreement, her face etched with sadness. Janet remained stoic and unmoving, her silence a damning statement in itself. Denise was a ghost at the table, a visible black hole of misery. We will be reviewing the events of today's program internally, Ruth continued, her words chosen with extreme care. But for now, we still have a show to do. We'd like to hear from you on our topic of the day. They limped through the final 20 minutes. The phone-in about re-gifting felt absurd, a surreal piece of theatre following the raw drama that had preceded it. The energy in the studio was gone, replaced by a thick funereal pall. Calls from viewers were stilted, with several people ignoring the topic altogether to express their support for Dame Judi. Ruth handled it all with impeccable professionalism, but the strain was visible. When the final credits rolled and the theme music played, it felt less like a celebration and more like a dirge. The moment the on-air light died for the last time, Denise Welch finally broke. She let out a dry, ragged sob, burying her face in her hands. The public humiliation, the fury of her colleagues, and the terrifying unknown of her professional future had finally crashed down upon her. Colleen, despite her anger, instinctively put a comforting arm around her shuddering shoulders, while Janet simply stood up, disgusted, and walked off the set without a backward glance. The career-defining moment on live television was over. The career-destroying fallout was just beginning. The story did not end when the cameras went dark. It had only just begun. The on-air confrontation was merely the stone thrown into the pond. What followed were the ripples, which quickly grew into a tidal wave that would reshape careers and dominate the national conversation for days to come. The moment the broadcast ended, the digital world exploded. Before Dame Judi had even settled into the back of her chauffeured car, the clip was everywhere. It was sliced into a dozen different viral segments on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The hashtag #IsJusticeForJudi was no longer just trending. It was a global phenomenon. Juxtaposed memes appeared within minutes. On one side, a regal image of Judi Dench as Queen Victoria, captioned, "My Best Days." On the other, a screen grab of Denise Welch's snarling face, captioned, "Common sense appointed me." News outlets, smelling blood in the water, abandoned all other stories. The Guardian's website ran the headline, "A masterclass in dignity, Dame Judi Dench dismantles presenter in vicious on-air ambush." The Daily Mail, reveling in the drama, splashed, "Shame of Loose Women. Vicious Welch trashes national treasure Judi Dench, 78. In sickening TV attack, watch the moment a legend fought back." BBC News posted a more measured but equally damning piece titled, "ITV faces of calm investigation after Dame Judi Dench bullying, incident on Loose Women." In the back of a black Mercedes gliding silently through the London traffic, Dame Judi sat not in triumph but in a state of quiet reflection. Her publicist, Eleanor, was still surgically attached to her phone, her voice a low, steady murmur of crisis management turned opportunity. "No, we will not be doing Newsnight," Eleanor was saying. We will not be doing Piers Morgan uncensored. We will be issuing one single dignified statement. That is all? Yes, I agree. Her approval ratings are probably higher than the late Queen Mother's right now, but we are not going to cheapen this. Thank you. She hung up and looked at her client. Well, it appears you've accidentally become a global icon for graceful self-defense. Don't be ridiculous, Eleanor. Judi sighed, looking out at the passing city. I just lost my temper with a rather silly woman. I raised my voice. It was all so dreadfully uncivilized. Judi, Eleanor said gently. You were the only civilized person in that room. You absorbed blow after blow until you had no choice but to respond. You didn't just defend yourself. You defended every woman of a certain age who has ever been told to be quiet, step aside, or disappear. That's why it's exploding. This wasn't just a squabble. It was a cultural moment. Judi considered this for a moment. Still, she said softly, I do hope she's all right. No one deserves the kind of public vitriol that is likely heading her way. It was a thought so genuinely compassionate that it served only to highlight the chasm between the two women. For Denise Welch, there was no quiet reflection. Her journey from the studio was a living nightmare. She was bundled out of a side exit by a flustered Martin and 2 security guards, but the paparazzi were already there, a baying pack of wolves drawn by the scent of scandal. The flashbulbs were blinding, a relentless barrage of popping lights. Questions were screamed at her from all directions. Denise, do you regret bullying Judi Dench? Are you going to be fired, Denise? Was it jealousy, Denise? Is that why you did it? She kept her head down, bundled into the back of a taxi, the driver staring at her in the rearview mirror with an expression of pure contempt. The journey home was silent, the air thick with the unspoken. When she arrived at her quiet suburban home, the sanctuary she usually cherished, she found 2 more paparazzi vans parked across the street. Her safe space had been violated. She locked the door behind her, the silence of the house pressing in on her. She leaned against the door, her body trembling. Her phone, which she had put on silent, was vibrating incessantly on the hall table. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of text messages. She didn't need to look at them. She knew they would be a cascade of fury from friends, family, and colleagues, and a torrent of hatred from strangers. Her agent, a man she had been with for 15 years, was the first call she dared to answer. His voice was not angry. It was worse. It was tired, clinical, and final. Denise, he said, without any preamble. I've just had a call from the head of ITV Daytime. Your contract has been suspended, effective immediately, pending a full investigation. They've made it clear off the record that it's a formality. You won't be returning to the show. The board is insisting on it. Denise slid down the door until she was sitting on the floor, the phone still pressed to her ear. But they can't. They can and they have, her agent said, his voice devoid of sympathy. Denise, what were you thinking? I've spent my afternoon fielding calls from brands who are pulling their sponsorship from any show you're associated with. A charity you're a patron of has asked for your immediate resignation. This is a cataclysm. There's no other word for it. She started, but no words came. What could she say? That she was having a bad day? That she resented Judi Dench's effortless class? That she had intended it as a bit of edgy banter that had spiraled out of control? All of it sounded pathetic, even to her. I can't represent you after this, Denise, he continued. The final nail in the coffin. The damage is too great. I'll have my assistant forward you the termination paperwork. I wish you... Well, the line went dead. She sat there, in the silent hall of her empty house, the vibrating phone her only companion. She had walked into the studio that morning as a well-known, if divisive, television personality. She would end the day as a pariah. By early evening, the official statements began to land. ITV released theirs first, a carefully worded piece of corporate damage control. ITV and the Loose Women production team are deeply concerned and disappointed by the events of today's broadcast. The comments made to Dame Judi Dench were unacceptable and do not align with the values of respect and integrity that we demand of our programming and presenters. We have launched an immediate and thorough investigation into the incident. We have extended our sincere and unreserved apologies to Dame Judi Dench and her representatives for the distress caused. A few hours later, a statement appeared on Dame Judi's official social media channels, posted by Eleanor. It was a model of brevity and grace. I was thankfully raised to believe that age is a privilege, not a predicament. While today's discussion was certainly unexpected, I hope it can serve as a reminder that a person's value is not determined by their date of birth. Creativity, passion, and a love for one's craft are timeless. I consider the matter closed, and I will be making no further comment. I look forward to continuing to discuss my new film, The Last Letter, and the wonderful work of all the cast and crew involved. The statement was hailed as perfectly pitched and utterly classy. It didn't gloat. It didn't condemn Denise Welch by name. It simply rose above the entire sordid affair, gently reinforcing the very point she had been forced to make on air. It cemented her status as the victor, not just of the argument, but of the entire moral narrative. The incident on Loose Women was no longer just a shocking television moment. It had become a cultural touchstone, a lesson in the high cost of casual cruelty and a powerful testament to the enduring, unshakable power of grace under fire.